Here now to react to the deadly Barcelona attack, we have Fred Barnes, Weekly Standard executive editor, Scott Martin from Kingsview Asset Management. They are both Fox News contributors. And Dan Bongino, former Secret Service agent and former NYPD officer. Dan, Spain has a history of dealing with terrorism, so they know how to track these things. They dealt with the Basque terrorists back in the 70s and 80s. They haven't dealt with it very recently, though, and ISIS in particular has targeted other nations. They've targeted, of course, the United States, Great Britain, Belgium, France, Germany. But this is, I believe, the first time they've gone after Spain. Why now?
Well, because the Eurozone makes it very easy to travel. So that's one obvious reason. So you just want to attack any country where you can get publicity for your deranged cause. And like I said, the Eurozone travel, making the facility, the ease of travel makes it very easy to do so. And also, David, these are really easy logistics attacks to plan. I mean, all they require is the ability to operate a vehicle. This isn't obviously a 9/11 style attack that required up to $500,000 in money and extensive flight training. So wherever they can get attention to their deranged cause because they're losing at home, they're going to do it. And Europe, if you're part of that travel zone, you know, you should be on high alert right now.
Scott, the market ended the day down 274 points. It was digesting this information. It was down at the beginning, even before market opened. It was down, but it really started to accelerate its losses toward the end of the day. Why?
Well, because the market, David, I believe, is in a mood, as it has been in the last couple of weeks, where it shoots first and asks questions later. And I'll tell you what's funny. You're right. This was going to be a rough tape today to begin with. The S&Ps were down about almost 1% at the lows before the attack because of, I believe, the dismantling of the Manufacturing Council. To be honest, David, the market had overnight to digest the implications of things falling apart with respect to that organization.
But why the late day? Excuse me for interrupting, Scott. But why the late day sell-off? Because that, to me, that was a direct result of what we saw in Spain, but not to you?
I agree, David, but the market, intraday or for a couple hours, the market can do a lot of things that aren't going to portend to what's going to happen tomorrow in a couple days. But I tell you what, if you're a weak hand in this market, which I believe is the last, say, 5% or so of upside we've seen in the S&P, those are the weak hands getting out as a result of these terrorist attacks.
All right, Fred, we had 3 tweets by the president. 2 were consoling and we're with you, we love you, etc. And then we had the General Pershing comment. Do you think there's any relation to the General Pershing comment, which, by the way, is not totally dismissible because, according to his autobiography, General Pershing did indeed bury Muslim insurgents with pigs to try to stem the revolt, but it wasn't the entire reason the revolt was stemmed. But do you think that had any effect? People, maybe traders saying, oh, my gosh, he's off again.
I wouldn't doubt it. You know, there's trouble at the White House and with aides fighting each other in public, you know, I mean, particularly with Steve Bannon publicly denouncing Gary Cohn, the economic advisor at the White House. I mean, I think they're forcing a decision on the president, and the president's decision-making authority hasn't looked very good recently. I mean, I think people are really worried about the White House, and when Trump is tweeting something about General Pershing 100 years ago, it makes people wonder. It makes me wonder.
Yeah. Dan, I mean, let's talk more about what's going on and what we're watching on the screen here. You know, what do you think is the reaction to all of this tomorrow?
Well, gosh, you know, I know from a law enforcement front, my sources within local, state, and federal law enforcement, they've been on the alert for these vehicular type attacks, obviously, for a long time. This isn't the first and sadly likely not the last. But, Melissa, there's really not much you can do to prevent this outside of this one thing. You need preoperative intelligence. And by operation, I mean these terrorist operations. You need to shake the trees in these neighborhoods. You need to go develop sources. There really is no other way to do this. I mean, think about this. The difference between this and the 9/11 style attack, outside of the planning, is the interaction with the terrorists outside of their own community. In order to do flight training, you're going to meet someone outside of your local area. To learn how to drive a car over a bunch of people in a sick fashion like this really doesn't require much.
Yeah. Fred, what were you saying?
Look, I think there is something you can do, and I think cities and places where people congregate by the many thousands, it's going to have to be done, and that is to ban vehicular traffic. I mean, it's been done around Times Square on New Year's Eve.
On the side of the road.
Scott, go ahead.
they're on the side of the road. I mean, I get the point. Yeah, you want to ban vehicular traffic, maybe these vans, but my goodness, I mean, look at the attack on the London Bridge. I mean, people are walking on the side of the roads. I just don't see how you're going to keep vehicles away from people in modern day life.
It's going to be very hard if you don't ban them. And I mean, a vehicle with somebody driving it looks perfectly innocent.
Yeah, Dan. I mean, I would just think they're just going to come up with something different. I mean,
Yeah, with all due respect to Fred, that's totally impractical. Then they'll start driving vehicles into the front of supermarkets. I mean, I get the point, but there are ways to do this. You can keep people on the sidewalk. You can put those aesthetically pleasing flower pots that are vehicle obstructions up.
Yep.
There's ways to do this without shutting down vehicle traffic.
Well, those are good ideas that you mentioned, but I think in the short run, you're going to have to do something about the vehicle traffic in downtown areas. I've been there in Barcelona. I could have been one of those people walking around there. Yeah. It's a wonderful city, but very vulnerable.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys, thank you.